Welcome to the Manawa Tech podcast. My name is Siobhan. In this episode, I chat with Mark Easton. And this episode is actually a really good one if you're someone who wants to use their tech skills, plus build your own company. In this episode, we learn the importance of local relationships, difficult conversations, and getting outside your comfort zone. Mark does a really good job introducing himself, so I'll let you enjoy the episode. Cool. So, hello, Mark. Welcome to the Manawa Tech podcast. Thanks for coming on. I guess I sort of start every podcast like this with every guest. So, do you want to just describe yourself, who you are, and what you're about?
Sure. So I'm Mark Easton. I have lived in the Manawatu most of my life. Now I run a professional services and digital technology company here in the Manawatu called Nodero. So, that's we've been around for about 11 years. I've been doing this type of thing for my whole career, which spans about 25 years. And
Nice.
It's good to still be here.
It's incredible. So you said from the beginning you started off so did you start this agency by yourself, like in the beginning, or did you have a job before that?
I had a number of jobs. So I finished university and sort of did the usual, worked a couple of years here in Palmerston North, graduated from Massey, and then I went overseas for a couple of years and travelled, worked as well, came back to Palmerston, planned not to come back to Palmy, but turned out that way.
That happens.
Yeah, exactly. Stayed for all the right reasons, but it's funny where life sort of takes you. And as I say, about 11 years ago, I decided I needed a change. I'd always been interested in entrepreneurship and doing, sort of trying to be captain of my own ship a little bit more than what I'd been doing in previous roles. And so I started off initially just sort of consulting, and then pretty quickly brought a partner on board, and then we grew the company from there. Just sort of organically grew over that period.
That's awesome. I think entrepreneurship is something I definitely want to dive into. But just going back a little bit, in university, I'm assuming you studied computer science, or did you do something similar in that grade? What did you study in university?
I did the, it was called Bachelor of Technology at the time, which is essentially engineering. And I did the computer systems major. And so it was a mix of standard comp sci with a few sort of process engineering and project management type papers. So it was funny. I spent the whole time in my degree wishing I was doing, I don't know, philosophy, psychology, sociology, all that sort of airy-fairy things, which I find fascinating. Not denigrating them, but but it's been a great career. I've never really sort of seriously wanted to jump out and do other things. So it's funny how it sort of works.
Cool. Leaving university, what kind of jobs did you do? Like, was it just random jobs, or jobs particularly involving computers, computer science, technology?
Well, I was really lucky because part of the program, similar actually to how it still runs now, how UCOL runs with their bachelor, needed a bunch of hours with industry on sort of projects. And so I worked with a company called R&D Solutions. They're still around in Palmerston. They've come from the oil and gas industry, used to be particularly strong in the Manawatu, and there's still quite a few companies that are connected to it, and some really great companies have come out. And I think it all sort of started around a company in Martin called PEC, and they're still going too. They've been through various ownerships and then back to owning themselves. But anyway, they spun out a bunch of really interesting companies. So I did my project with them. It was very cool at the time. We were doing license plate reading in a forecourt. That was what my project was on. And then
it was computer vision sort of stuff.
Yeah, computer vision, and we were using like Bluetooth when it was like absolutely raw protocol, not just sort of plug and play. And so a lot of that protocol stuff I really loved. That was a really, really great start to my career.
Great. On to the good stuff now. When did the urge or kind of the desire for entrepreneurship arise or come into play? Was it always in you, or did it kind of come up after starting work?
I think I'd probably say after starting work. And it's funny, I reflect on it now, and it was pre.com even when I finished. It was all about Y2K when I finished. But very much at the time, the idea was if you do really well at university, this was the messaging I got. You can work in one of the consultancies, the large Wellington consultancies. That was almost as high as you sort of aspired to coming out of university. The idea that you could start your own company or, do your own thing, it was not covered at all. And, I think maybe in this day and age, some of that commerce, entrepreneurship type papers would be more useful than some of the process engineering papers we did and some of the things much more engineering focused. So no, definitely, I guess as I went through my 20s, I guess it started to fuel. There was always what's it going to be? What's it going to look like? And, but yeah, it sort of, I guess, bubbled up until, I guess a bunch of life events happened, which really triggered a sort of now or never move, which made me, I was in a company, it was a good company. They were actually doing similar things. It was a professional services company that would work for other clients. And, but I needed a bit more control. So went from there.
Cool. So how did you line up with Nodero? Was it the first kind of thing you did on your own, or did you try many things before that?
I went straight into Nodero. I really started it as an umbrella organization. One of the reasons I chose Nodero as a name is like, all right, I've worked for lots of companies that are called something technology solutions and like super geeky.
Yeah.
And I want something really generic. So if I want to
Yeah.
become a nut farmer, I can change. I'll keep the name and I'll go and do
So
something
you
else.
can definitely pivot.
Ultimate
Yeah.
pivot. So yeah, that was one of the driving things. But it definitely, I jumped around in terms of clients and the type of work I was doing inside, the software world. But it was very much, I guess, as I said, an organic growth from me contracting, finding other people who wanted to do the same and saying, well, maybe we can actually build something here.
Okay. What were the biggest learning curves coming out of, let's say you're working for people, you kind of know how it works. Stepping into your kind of own business, what was the first thing you learned? Like the first kind of, I didn't see this coming.
A lot of the hardest part, I think, of any business is making sales, and I think that's, even when you're contracting, you're still like, I know I'm going till the end of June, whatever, and what's happening after that. And so you really have to switch that mindset from not only being very much focused on what you're doing, making sure that's great, but you have to start thinking about what's next. And of course, as you start bringing other people on board, it's not just what's next for me, it's what's next for all of these people. So I think, maybe not everybody, but for me, coming from very much in engineering, I was a senior developer for sure in the companies I'd come from, but that was at a technical consultative level. It wasn't really the sales, the networking, getting out there, meeting people. And so that was, I guess, the biggest learnings for me were how do you do that?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And you touched on it with university. I can kind of see where you're going with like psychology, marketing, and sales. Those are really important skills to kind of be taught. But I guess as an entrepreneur, you learn those things like on the job, right? Like if you taught it to just 10,000 people, there's only like a sliver of people who would actually take that advice on board, like yourself. Coming back to like being a senior developer, obviously were you leading teams as a senior developer? Did that kind of help you at all?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, most of the projects we did were multi-person teams and dealing a lot with clients and partnerships with clients where you'd obviously just be providing part of the solution. Maybe you'd have another vendor doing another part of the solution and you're all sort of working together and collaborating and taking juniors on. And so that's obviously a huge help. So it's an extension and, I was listening to the pod you had with Michael, and that's just that conversation about moving away from doing tech to doing people. That's and process and management. That's a big thing that anyone I think who owns a business has to take on.
What sort of percentage do you do tech and managing the business?
Me now, probably about 90% managing. And when I'm in the tech, it's usually like either something's really wrong or there's something better I should be doing because it's just all about, there's only so many hours in the day, and I've got really good people. But I guess I have a heritage, and I've got, there's so much you learn on the job, whether it's sales or whether it's technical. And I think the industry kind of says, 3 years, do these tutorials, build out a portfolio, and you're a senior. And I think there needs to be acknowledgement of how much you learn from being in the fire when things go wrong. And, just time is a huge factor, I think, in terms of what it means to be a senior. It's not just being super hot with like one language or something like that. And so, I don't do a lot, but I'm still useful in a database sometimes.
Nice. Yeah, I think you're definitely right. Like people skills, communicating, and just knowing the problems before they happen, rather than I don't know being able to know this tech stack very well or know this very niche type of function. That's definitely really important communication, I think. And I really appreciate you bringing up the podcast with Michael, because he really brought up that point that there's a line he said. He said most problems just end up being communication problems. So I think it's really great if you're good at that sort of skill. In terms of Nodero, how do you go about getting clients? Because I see you got clients like Messi, Babel, Homebase. Like, how did you get those clients, and how did that all? Did they find you, or did you reach out to them?
Look, it's a real mix of both. I think Nodero started because when I looked around, there wasn't a lot of really good enterprise level expertise locally. Certainly not. There were lots of really great people, lots of good individuals, but there wasn't really a company providing like that digital solutions to corporates. And so you'd have those groups like Massey and Toyota and all of the larger companies in the region would just by default go to Wellington, go to Auckland, because it was easier. And there's a certain whole bunch of things, scale, so capability, capacity, governance, all the kind of things that wrap around what makes a good partner for a larger organization. There wasn't a lot of that. And so that was really what we were trying to do. It's like, hey, there are really good people here. There's a lot of value, despite living in this world where everyone's saying offshore it all. There's something really, I think, awesome about being able to meet face to face. It's great. We've got customers all over the country too, but there's something good about face to face. And I think, you're seeing that post COVID, people are saying, oh, you know what, back into the office a bit more. And we find it the same with our clients. So, a lot of it was local networking, local connections. And then there was a mix of some other things. We were already doing a bunch of work in health. And then I watched a webinar, and the associate director of digital at the time, he was saying, basically we don't have enough people. We've got a ton on that, the health sector needs a shake up. And so I just basically cold called them or cold email and said, hey, enjoyed your webinar. You said you got a problem. Here we go. Look outside Wellington. And then, from that we had conversations, and that's led to some really, really great projects down in Wellington with Te Whatu Ora and Ministry of Health. So yeah, you try everything. But I think it is, by and large, we have, we don't have a huge array of clients. We have a relatively small set of clients that we work really closely with, and we have really long partnerships. Like both Massey and Toyota we've been with pretty much since we started, so 10 years, and that's pretty normal. That's what we're looking for, as opposed to get in there, do a job, move on, sort of transactional model.
Yeah, it's like a long-term relationship, like you're building a relationship in the long term.
Yeah,
as
totally.
opposed to, because like, what's stopping someone from going on Fiverr? Like I always think about this. You talked about offshoring. Someone could just go to Fiverr and get a cheaper deal. What stops people? What do you think stops people from doing that?
I think, well, there's a number of reasons. Some people do, and it works great. Some people do, and it's a nightmare. There's a real mix, of course. Some people have, the account will be in New Zealand or local, but some of the work will be done offshore. And I think it's sort of different strokes. It depends what you need. One thing that we found really interesting working with one local company, they were using offshoring at the time as well. Mm-hmm. And they felt like they could strip down the development team, but they didn't ramp up, the requirements and the analysis phase and the design. and they also didn't ramp up their QA and their testing. So
Yeah.
even though these, I guess these offshore developers, probably great, I'm not saying they weren't good developers, but they didn't have the sort of the scaffolding around for the total delivery, and so it created a lot of problems. And so, we were there, the offshore company were there, and then the offshore company weren't there, and we were still there because, obviously you go offshore for a number of reasons. It costs a massive one, but there's total cost. Hourly rate's not the whole picture. It's like, how long is it going to take? What's the maintenance costs going to be going forward? Can we get hold of someone down the road? And so that's a big reason that you've got continuity, that you've got that relationship. People, so many of our clients just say they like working with us. But it's not a transaction, and we have to make sure we're doing really good stuff, of course, and that's a huge focus of ours. But if you're doing good work and you're just generally super easy to work with, I think it just makes everybody's life easier. And the other part would be that governance. It's just so much easier to manage. I think our clients know they can just get us on the phone, call, get us in person if they need to. They can say, look, we're ramping up around our security governance. That's a huge sort of hot ticket item. And for our size, we can pretty quickly put together what's needed. I wouldn't say we'd instantly go SOC 2 compliance, but if a client said to us, we need that, then would be listening and would say, well, okay, sure, what can we put in place to make that happen? And so I think there's an aspect of that too, that we're small enough that we can listen, be agile, and sort of work with these companies.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think two things you could sort of highlighted. One was the personal relationship, like you're just local, so you can meet face to face. Versus it's really hard to, if you go on Fiverr or I don't know, do something offshore, you don't get that personal connection. It can happen. You don't really get that personal connection, like you're saying. And also, I feel like your team works really hard for your clients, which is really good because of that personal connection, and you get that high quality. It's the level of quality is through the roof, I think, compared to like I said, transaction or the bottom line. So
I guess
really
you've got a level of quality and sort of promise that a company can provide as well. If you get someone, whether they're Fiverr or an individual consultant even, when they're gone. And, we see that with our other clients, especially government clients. There's heaps of independent contractors, and they'll be great. But if they get a new deal or, and they're gone, there's all of a sudden you've got a massive gap and low continuity. Whereas when we work with a customer, then I guess there's that level of continuity. Sure, the individual developer or analyst or project manager might leave for a variety of reasons, but you've got that sort of retained knowledge in the company. You've got that capacity that if needed, you can put someone else in. You can transfer that knowledge really easily. If it's, if like a really great example, we have a fantastic UX designer as part of our team.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time he's doing work for other companies such as, Levno and other groups around the region. But often he'll just provide guidance to our developers. Now, sometimes that's built into the project and it just lifts the game. But other times it's just, hey, what are your thoughts? Just sort of put it back on track. And so there's all these extras you get with a company that's got like a diversity of skill sets and also levels of maturity and experience that an individual or someone from Fiverr, they can't give that.
So. Yeah, exactly. So you've got that team environment. I was just going to ask too, like with your, like there's maintainability, right? So obviously like when someone asks for a particular thing to be done, you can't just give them the product and then see you later. There's obviously maintenance, and that's an overhead too. How do you deal with that sort of aspect? So like, let's say you want to take another client on. It's not just doing the job. It's also maintaining that code base, their requirements, anything afterwards. How do you deal with all that?
Totally. Well, I mean, it's process. We got processes in place, and we use all the sort of usual tools like Jira and Git, and the same ones that most people should use and generally do. That's a part of it. We've built up a small support team now, because that's more and more of it. It is really hard when you're very small. You just have to make do, and usually you just see who's available to look after them, jump in. But I guess we've got to a size now where we can have someone who's pretty much dedicated, especially for the triage and the managing and keeping track of that. So that just makes life a lot easier and just puts a level of sort of control around that.
Nice. In terms of your team, like how do you pick good team members? How do you like keep them engaged in the work and not kind of, sometimes when you're doing a job, you could get a bit bored and like the passion or an initiative isn't really there. How do you maintain that?
Yeah, well, it can be tough. I mean, I'd say we've got really great staff, but I think for anybody, and I know myself, different roles I've had in the past, it is pretty hard to maintain that. And I think there's always this sort of thing about product company versus services company. Products generally seen as a lot sexier, but there's a variety you get in a professional services company, different clients, different work. And sometimes that's a real challenge, of course, because you're jumping into a different environment, different people, different problems they're dealing with. But that can be really satisfying too. You having to learn, you're being able to take what you've learned over in one sort of space and implement it somewhere else. And so I think that's really good. We've created an environment where we've built people up a lot from. We've done heaps with UCOL with the interns, so a lot of our developers have come through that program, and we've done the internships. Often, stay with us afterwards, and so that it just gives us, I guess, capability to help them build up their skills. Hopefully, let them have some control about what they want to learn in terms of training. Trying to keep that balance with training. It's a challenge, and it's something we're always trying to get better at, both training and how do we utilize people to best effect, and how do we keep them interested and on the path they are going. And I think it's just a combination of a bunch of things, but I think just talking and listening goes a long way, and being able to talking with other companies, being able to have honest conversations, like really positive, and trying to have a lot of empathy for each other, but at the same time not being afraid to say, well, you say you want to be in this place, or you feel like you deserve to be in this place, but this is what we need for this, for a senior role, or for you to be able to run a project yourself. And so Ray Dalio talks about that sort of radical candor, putting it all out there, that sort of brutal truth. And I don't know we go all the way, but it's something I've really been trying to do, is like, if you're thinking something, there's no point holding it back, say it nicely, but don't just keep it hidden. And I hope my staff would be the same, and trying to create an environment where if they go, you know what, I'm bored, or this is not what I thought I'd be doing, this is what I'd rather be doing, just creating an environment of trust where you can say that, and it's not sort of the house doesn't fall down.
Yeah, there's something, I'm scared of honest feedback, when someone tells me I'm bad. It's something you need to know but don't want to hear. So like, it's like, how's having, you must have difficult conversations at work or with clients. How do you deal with that?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you just have to lean in. The common thing is you don't try and sugarcoat or butter it, especially if it's hard. You get into it pretty quickly. You don't have a 10-minute conversation about their kids first in those type of talks. But as I said, I think trying to have empathy is a big thing. We don't try and sort of bust down on people really quick. Trying to understand their situation or whatever it is, and it's the same with clients. And we've had it both ways. You always have, I guess, things go on with your staff, and at the same time, you have projects go badly as well, and you need to like front up and say, this is the situation. What are you seeing? What do you need for this to get right? And conversely, you've got clients where you have to say, look, this isn't working for us. This is what we need for success. We don't want failed projects, And for that to happen, we need, I don't know, you to be way more involved than you're willing to give, and be willing to walk away in those kind of situations too. So.
Fair enough. In terms of like what makes a great developer, that's something I would like to become. What makes someone, junior, senior, I guess. Like, to be honest, I don't really believe in the junior, senior. I think everyone should just have a beginner's mindset and continually learn, and then help others along the way. What makes a great developer or someone great in your team?
I think there's a couple of things, but I think what you touched on about always wanting to learn is really important. Like, if you don't have that spark of wanting to get better, and I'm wired that way. I'm always looking on Hacker News or dev.to and looking at tutorials. And even as I said, I'm not coding much, but I very much keep on top of technology. Probably annoying to my team. I'm like, hey guys, look at this tool, without wanting to follow shiny things, but it's still like wanting to be better yourself. And so I think that's a natural part of it. You can't wait for training, and you can't wait for everything to be handed to you on a platter. And I think that's especially true for students, for sure. More and more it's the portfolio which people will be interested in. My son's doing game development in Auckland, and he was worried about people downloading his code and on GitHub. I'm like, dude, no one's going to even download it. Just get a really good README page that explains what you did, what you learned. Obviously your code's there, so it's got to be reasonable, but you don't have to worry too much about the running. No one's got time for that. But they just want to see that you're into it and you care. So that's a big part of it. In terms of what makes you more senior, like it's not time. I guess that's the thing. There's a level of mastery that you need. There's a level of, for us, you have to being able to help, as you say, help others, and that there's a level of experience that you need. Well, anyone can help each other, but that's a big part of it. And then for us, for sure, just because of the nature of our business, there's a level of being able to go in authoritatively to a client and more own the problem. Essentially, what I read in business, it's all about delegation. And so what I need is for people to come to me, not just say, hey, there's a problem, and ideally not even say, hey, here's a problem, I suggest this, but hey, here's a problem, I dealt with it, especially at a technical level. And so,
or tried at least, like, I've tried to have got this problem. What do you think? Is there a better solution rather than?
Totally.
It's kind of like it's this learned helplessness. I'm guilty of it as well. Like sometimes, let's say this build, like we've got a system at work that the build doesn't work, and then I just said, I can't figure it out. I'll just wait for stand up to explain I can't do my job because the build isn't working, instead of just diving in, trying to fix something, submit a PR, and then the boss can have a look and see if it works. So I guess it's that initiative. And I liked how you talked about your son doing game development, which I think is really great. It's really hard. Definitely the projects is a key thing, right? So do you have a lot of people who, because I've seen Nodero grow massively, like looking at your team now, it's pretty big, like starting from yourself to now. That's really great. People probably ask for jobs or want to get jobs. If someone who want to get a job, what's your advice for them? Or what do you look for?
It's like a mix. Like, as I say, like projects are a big thing. We have a real mix of backgrounds. So I wouldn't say, that's not a clincher. We have a really great developer, for example, who did one of the boot camps. So he did have a degree, but then he'd done this sort of 60-hour-a-week React boot camp, but he had a whole lot of projects he'd done on the side as well, which demonstrated that he was really into it. So I guess it's that mix of enthusiasm, being able to answer questions with specifics. That's really important. And we've even had internship interviews in the past where people couldn't talk about the tech they'd used. They couldn't. They said, we said, what's the part of the course that you like the least? And they said software development. I was like, that's us. So I think there's a little bit of awareness of of what you do, what the company does, and I guess a level of enthusiasm for that that goes a long way. I think it does depend, of course, hugely on the type of role you're trying to take up. If you want the responsibility, you need to show that. We've generally been a company that I think builds people up. Again, back to sort of what Michael was saying, he started when there was 4 of them and he was doing testing, and then he ended up as CTO, and that's been our model too.
That's incredible.
We haven't brought in, sometimes I think to our detriment, we haven't brought in someone who's, I don't know, got bored at Capgemini, wants the Palmy life, and suddenly we can get someone who's dealt with all these massive clients. I would love that too. But most of the people have come from similar industry, or not similar industry, but I guess were brought up into that role. And so but they still need to demonstrate they can do it and they're up for the challenge.
Nice. In terms of, you've been in Manawatu, you said like you went away, came back, stayed. How do you find technology in Manawatu? Are we the next Silicon Valley, or like what? I think Michael has really, I was talking to Michael, I don't know if you heard at the near the area, he has very big hopes for tech in Manawatu. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I think everybody wants to be the next Silicon Valley. I think we have got some, there's so many like strengths to Manawatu. We've got, these two plus great educational institutes putting out computer science grads. You've got this mix of we're big enough that we've got enough big industry. We've got this big ag tech sector. There's quite a few government and local government. I always look at something like, say, Mid-Central, when it was Mid-Central, or the Palmerston North City Council, who are both clients of ours, and they're in an interesting space. They actually punch pretty well for their weight, because we're a city that's big enough that we have to. We can't just sort of get by, and we've got enough funding to do so, but we're not so big that it's impossible to move. So you can actually see some really exciting things going on. And, say Palmy Council, they run the call centres for a huge swath of councils around New Zealand, because they can set it up, and they can sort of keep it running, and then they can that skill set, that knowledge, they can sort of pass that on to others. So I've forgotten the question now, but hopefully that answered it.
Me too. I think you gave a great answer. I guess we're coming to the tail end of the podcast. Was there anything you wanted to add, Mark, in terms of what you want to kind of get your message out there? You can talk about your company. You can talk about what you think about technology in the Manawatu. Anything you want to talk about?
Look, I just think, I guess going back to, some of the stuff we talked about at the start, like, I really want to see like younger people jump in the game. I think, you never want to give up the life you had. Well, most of us don't. Things turned out for the best and everything. But I do look back and I go, there was no real reason why I couldn't have started my company 10 years earlier than I did, because you are doing a lot of learning. But as we said, a lot of that learning is around the sales, around the project management and the skills. You can have really good technical skills pretty quickly. And what's more, you can have ideas. You can be finding ideas if you're sort of more startup focused and product focused pretty quickly. And all that other stuff about building a business and about getting clients, it's, the younger you are, the easier it is to make mistakes and get back up. And so I guess that would be the thing. You don't have to sort of hit some peak or level before it's time to start.
I think people just keep waiting, right? It's like there's never the best time. Because I was going to ask you that, like in terms of, did you have to psych yourself up to start your own venture, or how did you do it? Just like, I'm going to take the plunge. How'd you do it?
Well, a bit of that. I mean, I'd had ideas and ideas for startup products, and as I say, the desire for a long time. And I had a massive sort of life-changing family crisis, which really sort of set me up to needing more freedom, needing a bit more control of my life and the way I spend my time. And I guess that was the real clincher for me. And I think that's a really cool thing about Palmy. Like you can control your time and a bit better. that's why people are in Palmy in the Manawatu for the lifestyle. There's a reason you're
Yeah.
there. It's usually because you don't like that. You might be ambitious, but you don't want that ambition to come at 4 hours of commute a day. So yeah, for me, it was like creating the lifestyle that I wanted and the business that I wanted. At that point in time, that was it.
Nice. I think you've achieved that. In terms of, you talked about like for most engineers, they can get the skills or technical skills quite early or through their work, through their job, through learning that way. How do you keep up to date? And how did you learn these kind of, I don't know, sort of soft skills, but skills around business? How did you learn all this? Was it just reading books, podcasts,
A mix of
just
both.
doing the work?
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
And still doing. We're undertaking a giant sort of marketing sort of rethink at the moment because we haven't generally done that. We know we do good work, but we haven't spent a lot of energy sort of getting that out there. And our major barrier is not losing because people don't think that we're good enough. It's people just not knowing us to begin with. And so, that's a big thing, but that's learned.
Yeah.
That's not natural for me. And so it's like finding people who know how to operate in that space, finding really good people and experimenting and having a go. And of course, podcasts and Twitter and LinkedIn articles, all those things, they can all help.
Yeah.
I think they can be noise as well. They're dangerous. You just like absorb and never spend any time doing
paralysis analysis.
Totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's similar to, as I say, always learning for tech. It's like always learning for those soft skills too. But things like, if you're an introvert, forcing yourself to go to the dev meetups or, I often look at people and I think something like Toastmasters would be fantastic, just forcing you to learn how to speak. Most of us can learn anything, I think.
Or even doing podcasts,
Well, there we go. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you brought up Ray Dalio as well, and he talks about, there's like I've got two of his books, they're unread. I think I've started reading one of them, but there's a video where he talks about learning and the fact of just getting outside your comfort zone. Like you said, being a senior is not about time in front of the keyboard. It's time in front of challenging yourself. And like you said, you did cold calling like when starting Nodero, so that's sort of very admirable that you're able to put yourself outside the comfort zone. Keep learning, putting yourself outside the comfort zone. So I guess people might want to get in touch with you, Mark. What's the best way to plug yourself, or how would you like people to get in touch if they wanted to or get to know you more?
Yeah, I mean, the best personally would just be to jump on LinkedIn and connect with me. I'm pretty. If someone raises a connection request. If they're in New Zealand, I always answer. If they're not in New Zealand, I think about it, but I'm pretty generous with my connections. And then as a company, just nodero.com and
awesome.
So contact us through that.
Great. We'll have all the links down below. Now, I asked this question to most people on the podcast. It's sort of tech related, but right. What's your favorite thing on your desk?
Oh, that's a challenge because we have like probably my mug. We've got some, keep the coffee coming. It's a very exciting desk. We moved offices about 3 months ago, and I always take a little while to settle. So I can't say I have exciting things. I don't even have any family photos, so it's a bit of a shocker.
That's all right. Very minimalistic. Do you have the mug with you or not?
No, I don't.
No, it's getting washed, which is good. Some people keep them like mugs from like 3 days, so that's good. Good that you do that.
Yeah.
So Mark, I guess thanks for hopping on the podcast, and I'll be happy to have you on like for a repeat episode later in the future. So thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah, it's been great. Awesome. Thanks,
Thank you for listening to yet another episode of the Manawa Tech podcast. If you have any feedback, please let us know in the comments down below. As always, we'll catch you in the next one.